Welcome back to another episode of Novelio. Today is Thursday, June 10th, 2021. I'm going to continue on with my reading of It Happened on Dufferin Terrace. She chose him because he was better spoken than Derek. Either one would have done an excellent job, and if the head of the company didn't want to give up his 2 employees to work on the project, numerous reputable IT companies were specializing in this. Frank, looking decidedly uncomfortable in a suit and tie, stood. The following image was first rough sketch he and his partner had made with Serenity. He explained the logic and architecture required. The blank looks on many of the faces said the managers were not sure what was in front of them. So there you have it. Web-based accounting software plus WAN, which will allow all the stores to talk with each other in head office. Citrix or Cisco has the hardware to make it all work. Thanks, Frank, Serenity said as she clicked to the next slide. Someone at the far end of the table applauded. We've been trying this for years. She smiled. Social media is another place where you need to have a presence. Facebook on page for each location. Set up your sales or other events in the calendar and invite people to come out to the local outlet. Have photos of samples of your merchandise. A brief history of the business. Yes, these will be on your internet site. However, the more you put yourself out there, the more people will see you. When they make their next purchase, Jonathan's might be the recipient of their spending. Throat parched from speaking, she topped up her glass and took another sip before continuing. Both Pinterest and Instagram are picture-oriented, which makes them great for showcasing your products. You don't have to get on to every website. These 3 will best fit with your image. Remember this, Facebook's post half-life is 90 minutes. A Pinterest post boasts about half-life of about 3.5 months. Before I close, while your signage is distinctive, all lowercase, italicized letters, and no apostrophe in the name, it's time for a makeover. I believe this brand has been in place for about 50 years. Jonathan Drake nodded but remained silent. A photograph of 4 different images were displayed on the panel. You don't need to decide now. Only one will adorn the Jonathan storefronts. Which one do you like best? These 2 are modern looking for my store, stated the manager of the St. John outlet. What if you substituted the exterior LED lighting because of the historic building and district you're in? For brass letters above the front entry. The illuminated signs could be in the window openings behind the displays and done in such a way as to not overpower them. You wouldn't switch them on until closing time. That might work. An excellent idea, Miss Lane. You're welcome. I wish you all a magnificent Christmas vacation with your loved ones. Serenity almost retched on her last sentence. She never knew a wonderful holiday season. Growing up, her Christmases were far from that. Now on her own, at least they were peaceful. No parents were fighting, just her big screen television, and selection of DVDs. We'll get together again in the new year. Everyone in the room, except Simon Drake, stood and applauded. His father, the head of the brand, came over and shook her hand. I have to admit, in the beginning, I had my doubts about a woman heading up this revitalization, but I'm happy to say I was wrong. You did a stupendous job. Her employer appeared at her side during the exchange. I told you Serenity was the right person. Shouldn't have doubted you, Thacker. I think this calls for a celebration. What do you think? His eyes met hers. I'm fine. I was only doing what I was paid to do. Once she uttered those words, she rushed out of the conference room. In her haste to escape from the room, she forgot to gather up her personal property. The corridor provided warmth and a moment of solitary time. Celebrating after the result of the meetings was a grand idea, but she wanted to share her fantastic news with only one person, and he wasn't there. Should she call him at work? Obtaining the phone number of the infirmary would not be difficult. Would it make her seem desperate? Yes. Still, she needed to see him again. What if she walked to the hospital and met him? Couldn't do that. She didn't know how late he worked or the exact location of his place of employment. The boardroom doors swished open, forcing her to duck into an alcove. Martin Thacker and the client exited the space. Other than herself, they were the last 2 in the room. Once they were around the corner, she returned and collected her belongings, including her MacBook Air. As she loaded the laptop into the wheeled case, the idea of meeting Roger appealed to her even more. First, she would take her computer to her room and exchange her business attire for something casual. Dressed in skinny jeans and a bulky knit turtleneck sweater, she pulled on her boots, grabbed her coat and handbag to leave. Serenity, wait! She turned, Her boss beelined to her. The meetings were over and she said she didn't want to celebrate. Why couldn't he take that for an answer? Why did he use her first name? In the office he called her Miss Lane, except for before the conference call at the beginning of the contract. The familiarity made her uncomfortable. I'm glad I caught up with you. One more day. In an attempt to fake interest, Serenity smiled at him. Just got off the phone with the other partners. They're in full agreement. After the job you did on the Jonathan's deal, the promotion is yours. The corner office and all the trimmings. I don't know what to say. A feather would have knocked her over. The announcement dumbfounded her. At one time she lived to hear those words. Now they were no longer relevant to her. Say yes? Mr. Thacker. Call me Martin. We're partners now. Not yet. That depended upon acceptance of the situation. This is a huge step. Can I take a few days to consider it? Would that appease him? Buy her some time? Of course. Take all the time you need, as long as I have your answer when we reopen for business after the holidays. No pressure at all, then. I want to stay here in Quebec City a bit longer. Decompress after the last few months. You don't want to go home and celebrate Christmas with an empty condo? No, thanks. She turned to leave, then stopped. I'll see you in the new year, and you'll have my decision by then at the latest. She didn't give him time to respond, but darted out into the street. Across Place d'Armes stood the Tourist Information Office. They would have maps there. If unable to find his place of employment, she could meet him at his home on Rue de Rempart. Roger mentioned his house was the opposite way to what they walked back from the town below the hill. The hospital or his residence was a great way to get out and see the city on her own. The door at the office was heavy. Serenity struggled to pull it open. Rooms on each side of the corridor housed customer service points. To her left was a 6-foot-tall statue of a snowman. In the other one, racks of brochures, and she hoped maps of the city took up the space, creating corridors within the room. Near the entrance, a ticket machine stood under a "Please take a number" sign written in both languages. When her turn came, she approached the agent. I wonder if you could tell me where to find Hotel Dieu. Pleased, she remembered, she smiled. The young, bespectacled man's mouth gaped open. You're not sick or injured, are you? He finally blurted out. No, Serenity assured him. If you can provide me with a map of the city, I can make my way there, among other places. The clerk bent down and retrieved a single-leaf atlas. Once unfolded, he spread it out on the counter. You're here. The hospital is here. He circled both with a yellow highlighter. And Rue de Rempart? Questions like that made her sound like a stalker asking for these specific locations, despite not giving a reason for wanting to know. The agent traced the road in the fluorescent liquid. You've been a great help. She took the accordion-folded paper and left the building in haste. Soon after she ventured outside, the bells in the cathedral tower pealed 5 o'clock. Too late to meet Roger at work and tell him how the series of meetings went. Best walk down the hill past the park. Maybe meet him along the way. She was confident he didn't have a car. That meant he would be on foot or using public transit. White spotlights shone on the red metal roof of the bistro to the right of the Tourist Information Office. Further down, garlands graced the storefronts. Serenity turned the other way and negotiated her way down Rue de Flore and past Parc Montmorency. Uncomfortable walking alone on the open side of the street, like the night Roger walked her to her temporary home, she kept to the side next to the structures. First was the seminary, according to what she could read of the map in the glow from the streetlights. Not wanting to make herself look like an easy mark, she fumbled to fold the page and crammed the paper in her pocket. If she carried on, she would end up where she wanted to be. After dark, being alone walking in a strange city frightened her. The shadows cast by the intermittent light were eerie. Anyone could be lurking in them. The more these thoughts came to her, the quicker she walked. Footsteps sounded. As they closed in, they became louder. Someone shadowed her, and her heart raced. Her worries were for naught. The man stepped off the sidewalk and into her peripheral vision. Every eye straight ahead, he bypassed her, then returned to the walkway in front of her. Still, she received a scare. She paused and waited for the pounding in her chest to slow to normal. After a few deep breaths to calm herself, she proceeded. By now she had reached the cobbled road she and Roger climbed. He told her then his house was beyond that. Some houses had the outside lights turned on and facades decorated. This segment was none was more residential than the previous one. How far was she from where he lived? Did she turn around and go back? Carry on? An outdoor light provided sufficient brightness, and she pulled out the diagram. She decided 2 blocks and no more. With her head down, engrossed in the map, she kept going further from her starting point with each step. As she came to the first intersection, a wall of parka collided with her. She stumbled backwards but remained on her feet. The person had on a trapper hat with flaps down, protecting their ears. "I'm sorry," she stammered, not watching where I was going. "Serenity? Roger? Coincidence? Not likely. Given the time, he would be on his way home from work." Inside, she smiled. Outwardly, her cheeks grew hot from her blush. "I should be the one apologizing to you. I almost knocked you down." "What is it with us? First a dog, now you. Do you bowl all your women over? You look half frozen. Come in and get warm." Before she agreed, or refused, for that matter, he had his key out and his house unlocked. He opened one of the double-leaded glass doors and stood aside for her to enter. Serenity took a tentative step over the threshold into the foyer, a flight of steps with stained treads and railing. White spindles and risers led upstairs. The door frames and baseboards were the same shade as the staircase. Roger helped her remove her coat and hung it on the barn-board rack for her, then placed his own beside it. "Go on through." He extended his arms, steering her to the living room. Tori lifted her head from her bed along the far wall, stretched and trotted to where they were, her tail wagging. In front of the window stood an enormous Christmas tree. It was as tall as some in the corridors of the Chateau Frontenac. Roger passed her and flipped the switch, illuminating the thing in hundreds of colored mini-lights. Red, blue, green, and white reflected off balls of the other ornaments. Serenity walked to the ornamented evergreen. With the effort he put into decorating, he kept Christmas alive. On a nearby table, a portrait of a couple and a small child smiled out from the acrylic frame. She lifted the photo and took a keener look. The man and his son were with a woman who had to be his wife and the boy's mother, the one who perished a few years ago. "Would you like to stay and eat with us?" His voice startled her, and she returned the photograph to its original location. "I can't promise you a gourmet meal. Here at the Scott residence, Friday night is fries and fish sticks." The mention of them made Serenity's mouth water. Those very things had been a once-of-a-week staple at her house when she was small. Quick, simple, and so much better than Kraft dinner or habitant pea soup. To this day, she couldn't look at either. "Sounds delicious. Not eaten them in ages." Roger strode to the base of the stairs. "Adam, come set the table." A few minutes later, the boy charged down to the main floor. She expected him to slide down the banister, but he didn't. "Lay another plate. Serenity is staying for supper." He hurtled into another room. Soon there was racket from the back of the house. Cupboard doors banged, cutlery rattled in the drawers. A rustic farmhouse table with 4 ladder back seats was in the back corner of the L-shaped room where she stood. 2 identical extras were in the corners, framing a matching wall unit. The small boy dropped the knives and forks with a clatter on the table's surface. He disappeared and reappeared with the plates. Serenity gasped, anticipating the crash of breaking china, which never came. He zipped around the piece of furniture, setting each place. After he vanished, she wandered to the dining area. The door swung back and forth on its hinges. The kitchen was visible in the moments of the door of the counter under the window. The kitchen was visible in the moments the door was open. She entered. The fridge stood in the far corner, the sink installed in the middle of the counter under the window. A built-in dishwasher was in the cabinets next to the double basin. The stove was on the other side of the galley. Roger struggled to get into the bag of frozen fries. She rushed to his aid. "Where are your scissors?" He pointed to the drawer. Shears in hand, she cut through the end of the plastic and pounded the chips on the parchment paper covered baking tray. "What can I say? I'm hopeless." Roger laughed nervously. Once they finished eating, cleared away the dishes, and loaded the dishwasher, Adam asked, "Do you want to see my room?" "I hope it's in a fit state to show people," his father said. The young boy had accepted her into the family. She smiled and said, "Sure." He jumped up from the table and took her hand. With somewhat more restraint, she stood and followed him up the stairs. They walked by an open door, a heavily wooden-framed bed with mattress high off the floor, overlaid in the navy duvet and bedskirt. took up the viewing slot. Coordinating shams protected the pillows. Adam opened the door to his room. "Come on," he urged, and advanced into the darkened zone. Once Serenity reached it, he turned on the light. All things solar system decorated the interior. A mural of the cosmos plastered 2 adjoining walls. Matching the seams in the corner must have been a nightmare. The other two, painted dark blue, was about the same color as the coverings in the first bedroom. A mobile of the planets hung suspended over the head of the bed. Even the bedding matched the intergalactic theme. "Very nice. You're into astronomy, I see." "Yes, one day I'm going to be an astronaut and go to the International Space Station." His enthusiasm gushed. Serenity knew all too well dreams could be shattered at a pin drop. It happened to her so many times she gave up dreaming altogether. Diligence in refusing to fall into the pit of self-wallowing. Pity her parents inhabited got her where she was. Aspirations had nothing to do with her success. Still, she couldn't defeat the kid while his vision was so vivid. Who knew? With hard work and determination, he might just achieve his fantasy. "I'm sure you will," she smiled at him. "Why don't you come for Christmas?" By now Adam's excitement knew no bounds, and he jumped up and down on his bed. "You and your father have other plans, I imagine." "No, say you'll come." "I don't know. I have nothing planned for the day, but ultimately your father has the final say." Adam stopped jumping and clambered off the bed. "Do you want to play snakes and ladders? Dad and I always do on Friday night." "Never played before." "What?" The boy's mouth gaped open and his eyes widened. "You don't know how?" "No, we never had games in the house when I was growing up." Adam raced out of the room and thundered downstairs. She went after and caught up with him as he glided across the floor onto his knees. To the buffet in the dining room. He rooted through a stack of boxes until he found the one he wanted. "Can I help you?" Serenity offered. She opened the box and pulled out the board. "What color do you want to be?" "Blue. That's my favorite." "I'm always red, and Dad is white." Adam put the pieces out along with the dice. "You go up the ladders and down the snakes when you land on the squares with them." Serenity stood her piece with the other 2. By now Roger joined them, and the round commenced. Uproaring laughter prevailed every time someone came to rest on a snake and slid back down to the beginning. She won the first, her face flushed. "Beginner's luck." Come, Adam. It's bedtime. They played 3 games as she triumphed, and she was declared the champion. "Okay, sport. Time for you to say good night. I'll come up to tuck you in shortly." "Aw, can't we play another?" "Not tonight." "Maybe you'll invite me again." "Sure." He scampered away. Roger walked her to the sectional, then excused himself. She sank into the overstuffed cushions. The dog sauntered over and sat on the floor in front of her. Tori's chin soon rested on her thigh. Not only were games of any kind missing from her childhood, but pets. She reached over and rubbed the dog's head. There was something about being here away from the hustle and bustle of Toronto that made her relax. She could be happy here in Quebec City, even more thrilled here in this house with him, his son and their dog. Would they want her to stay? Soon he reappeared with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. He handed one to Serenity and eased himself to the sofa beside her, then placed his on the coffee table. "It's from La Fudgerie in Lower Town." Chapter 18. Roger's home, Rue de Rempart, Quebec City. Roger bent down to unload the dishwasher. Adam sat on the counter next to the appliance, swinging his legs. Each time he brought them back, his heels bashed against the cupboard doors. The noise grated on Roger's nerves. When the battering pushed him to his limit, he straightened up and clutched his son's ankles and held them to prevent them from moving. "Must you?" His tone was sharp and angry. Teardrops welled in the boy's eyes. "Sorry, son. I didn't mean to snap. Just that constant pounding is doing my head in." Adam nodded but kept silent. After Roger returned to the task at hand, the small boy said, "I like Serenity. She's fun." He liked her too. This past week flew by too quickly for his liking. The chances of seeing her again, especially after she went back to Toronto and fell into a routine, were slim and none. "Dad, can she spend Christmas with us?" Sometimes his son came up with incredible ideas. This was one of them. The previous night, filled with laughter and a woman's touch in the kitchen, brought the house to life. Too bad she wouldn't be the one sharing the holidays with them. That's a great idea, but Serenity probably already has plans. "No, she doesn't." "How do you know?" "She told me." This kid of his didn't beat around the bush. No filter on him. If he had an opinion, out it came. When did she tell Adam? Call her, please. I don't know her number. You know what hotel she's staying at. Phone there. If he didn't know better, he would swear his 10-year-old son was going on 20. Not the small, innocent child plunked on the countertop next to him. But then he knew that after his profile wound up on the online dating sites, because of the slew of them, it took forever to remove himself. Still, the occasional email or text pinged his mobile. He left the room, door swinging back and forth in his wash. Roger removed the clunky telephone directory from the drawer of the side table. He flipped through the pages until he found the listing from the hotel. Having Serenity celebrate Christmas with them would make a pleasant variation from just the two of them and Tori. Their holiday routine consisted of tear through the gifts under the tree. Afterwards, they walked to the plains of Abraham to play ball with the dog, then back to the empty house. The cordless handset laid on the stand. Since it was beside the base, the battery might be dead. Roger pressed the control and it came to life. He bent down to read the print better and dialed. As the phone rang, he counted them. 6. Fairmont Le Chateau Frontenac. How can I help you? The female voice on the other end of the line was amiable. Her job was to be friendly, but her tone was modulated and pleasant on the ears. Except for the French accent, it was as if Serenity was speaking. Could I have Miss Lane's room, please? She's part of the group holding meetings there this week. Why so formal suddenly? Why not just use her given name? The line went dead for a moment, then another phone jingled. Roger tapped his foot on each ring, hoping she was there. If she didn't answer, he would call back and leave a message for her with reception. Hello? Her voice sounded in his ear. Hi, it's Roger. Adam wanted I do too, to know if you cared to join us on Christmas Day. He sucked in a deep breath and held it while waiting for her response. I'm not the festive type. It was never a big deal when I was a child. Damn, Serenity was about to shoot him down. But, she persevered, I had fun with you both last night, playing snakes and ladders for the first time. Well, I never laughed so much in my life. I'd love to spend the day with you. Are you sure I won't be putting you out? I'm not family. You won't be. What time? Earlier the better. I'm sure I can convince Adam to hold off opening his goodies until you get here. Say 8-ish? Perfect. I'll see you then. Serenity hung up the telephone. Presents? She couldn't just land in on Christmas Day without bringing the gifts. She danced around her room, gathering her handbag, coat, and boots, dressed and ready to go last-minute shopping for two people she hardly knew. Adam liked board games, but she didn't want to pick up one he already had. The elevator doors opened and she walked to the reception desk. I'm hoping you can help me. I must purchase a gift for a 10-year-old boy. Is there a toy store here? First, I need to extend my stay. Up until now, Jonathan's covered the cost of the room. I want to be here until... She consulted the calendar on her iPhone. January 6th. American Express gold card pulled out of her wallet. She placed it on the check-in desk. She had never spent this much money on a hotel room before. But this city and this luxurious establishment were worth the added expense. Check out the morning of the 6th and catch the train back to Toronto before returning to work on the 8th. Yes, we can do both. First your room, then the other. Clerk booked Serenity into the same room, but under her credentials. Once completed, she tore the top sheet off the pad of city maps, perused it for a moment, and marked an X on the location. It's called Benjo. How long to walk there? After a pause, she replied, between 20 and 30 minutes. Thank you, merci. Serenity studied the chart for a few moments and set out with the idea of selecting game for Adam first, then something for Roger on the way back. Hopefully both stores would gift wrap, although if she had to, she could purchase a roll of wrapping paper and tape and do it herself. The most straightforward route was to go to the Via station, turn left, and continue until she reached her destination. The direction you traveled made no difference to the hills in this city. At the moment, she walked downhill, but going back would be an uphill trek. A mountain goat would be hard-pressed to navigate the slopes here. Still, she cherished the crisp air and the proximity to the river and the friendly nature of the people in the restaurant, shops, and her hotel. Everything here was the polar opposite of Toronto. At least before she left, she took the time to put on her sensible winter boots. At the first major intersection, after she turned on Rue St. Paul, an SAQ of substantial size stood to the right. Back in Ontario, the equivalent was LCBO. Even though Serenity didn't imbibe, she could get a bottle of each red and white to have with their meal. If they didn't open them Christmas Day, Roger would have it for another occasion. She made a mental note to herself to come back this way so she could stop. There was a convenience shop near the lodgings that sold wine and beer, but the selection was limited, and the price most likely higher. The traffic signals flashed walk, and she crossed the street. Not much further until she reached her destination now. Below the overpass for the major highway and a couple more blocks left to go. The lack of storefronts beneath the bridges creeped her out. This was the only part of the city where she was nervous in broad daylight. Never in a million years would she walk down here after dark. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she quickened her pace to escape the shadows and parking lot. A stop at this SAQ, not one of her better ideas. Out from under the flyovers, Serenity's tension eased. She consulted the depiction again and continued to Benjo. When she approached, the sliding doors retracted. A blast of heat hit her as she stepped through the breach. Few strides further through the vestibule, and she entered what a child would deem toy heaven. Overwhelmed her. The store had something for all ages: trucks, cars, jigsaw puzzles, baby toys, educational things. Adam loved games, so she went straight to that section. Again, the selection amazed her. Snakes and ladders, which she knew the boy possessed, Chinese checkers, Clue, Othello, and different versions of Monopoly lined the shelves. After much deliberation, she decided on the Ultimate Banking Edition and went to the cash to pay. Once assured Adam could exchange the game if he already had that particular version, Serenity had it gift-wrapped. She paid for it and left, and the bag containing the box tucked under her arm. Rather than go back the same way she came, she walked to the stoplights at the end of the block. Trying to pull the map out of her pocket while holding a large carton was awkward at best. Somehow she accomplished the task, but not before placing the package on the ground between her feet to read the chart. She was on Boulevard Charest. To the left was Highway 175. If she followed that path, she returned to the heart of downtown with a relative ease. Winded by the time she reached Rue Saint-Jean, Serenity paused to catch her breath. The last bit of the road was an uphill climb, which grew steeper the further away she got from Benjo. At least this junction looked flat in both directions. Another look at her plan. If she went away from the wall, an SAQ was within a block or two. After a detour for wine, she started into the city. Outside of the fortifications surrounding the whole old part of the town, a crowd of people skated on the outdoor rink. Another thing she never did as a child. Small children wearing helmets pushed frames similar to hockey nets without the mesh as they made their way around the ice. An older girl in black leggings, sweater, and puffer vest performed jumps and spins as she zigzagged between the others. Her white fur headband, mittens, and figure skates contrasted with her otherwise dark outfit. Her parcels became more cumbersome the longer she lingered. The towering landmarks of the Price Building and Chateau Frontenac were invisible from this vantage point, blocked from view by hills and buildings. The name of the first cross street inside the barrier was familiar, but trekking up the steep hill didn't appeal to her. She would maintain her current route. While she strolled down Rue Saint-Jean, she pondered a gift for Adam's dad. As she walked by shops lining the side of the road she traversed, Serenity window-shopped. Nothing spoke to her as something he would like. Before she realized, she stood across from the flagship Jonathan's location. A eureka moment swept over her. That was the perfect place. After all, she left her packages in her room. The rattling of jackhammers vibrated through her feet, their thunderous noise drowning out the church bells of the nearby basilica. Once past the destruction of the structure to her right, the Art Deco edifice emerged, towering over the locality. She wasn't far from the hotel, so forged onwards to Rue de Bois. But instead of walking to the end, she turned and walked up the narrow close. The artists were busy opening their stalls. This might be a place to get something for Roger, although coming from here, the gift was more apt to be something for his house, not for him. Still, she meandered through the colorful shortcut, looking at the wares on display. Armed with this knowledge, Serenity quickened her pace, and in no time she reached the Chateau Frontenac. In the corridor, she placed her bundles on the floor, relieved to sit them down. She swore her arms were longer after her long trip from Benjo and the SAQ. And back here. After unlocking her door, she retrieved the bags and schlepped into the comfort of her temporary home. Housekeeping had been in and made up the room. Guilt washed over as Serenity dropped her purchases on the freshly made bed. She suffered another flashback to her adolescence. On the rare occasions that her mother did housework, she didn't dare set anything down.